everybody, it is that time of year. I've got my Christmas jumper on, and Scientology's big annual IES event is officially over. However, it appears things are still going on at St Hill, their UK headquarters near East Grinstead. Somebody sent me some wonderful drone pictures, which shows the extent to which they have damaged the land near their property. Why is this a problem? Well, it's a problem because Scientology erected this giant 45,000 square foot marquee without planning permission. It is situated within an area of outstanding natural beauty, which is a protected part of the countryside where there are extra provisions in place to ensure that the local environment is protected at all costs. Scientology have completely circumvented the entirety of this process by not applying for planning permission, and in the process they have damaged the land which is meant to be protected. I think this is absolutely outrageous. We're going to be looking at the pictures, we're going to be looking at the article I've written, and I've got one piece of news to bring to you at the end of this. But first, let's say hello to everybody in the chat. We have Bok Buddy here saying, hello Alex, thank you so much for joining. Bok Buddy is saying, Scientology seems to leave scars everywhere they go. Yes, not just mental scars and emotional scars, but also physical scars on the landscape as well. Dandy Warhol here saying, hello Alex, thank you for joining. Mary Kay, hi from Albuquerque, New Mexico, across the pond. Miss Sunrise Dawn, hello Alex, it's been a long time, so I thought I'd pop in to say hi. Thank you, welcome in. Yeah, I haven't done a live for over a week. I did make it very clear after the IS protest that I would be taking a short break. I have been busy working. I've been busy working behind the scenes as an activist, and earning some money, of course, doing my actual day-to-day job. But it has been nice to have a little bit of a rest from YouTube. But I can assure you, I'm back, and I'm back. I don't want to say with a vengeance, but I'm back with a renewed sense of motivation and a sense of drive to continue in this fight, irrespective of Scientology's failed attempts to ban us protesters and interfere with my life. Multi-chick here saying, hey Alex, listening in. Petrie Nar in the house, good to see some familiar faces. Okay, let's have a look at these pictures. So these were taken, I believe, yesterday, and this is the tent itself. As you can see, the marquee is huge. It's 45,000 square foot. They actually put up 3 tents to hold their annual IES event. Obviously, we were outside protesting. They have now, I can confirm, removed the 2 large tents that are either side of the what they call the Grand Marquee, and they have begun removing the skin, the outside shell of the marquee itself. Obviously, all the interior decorations, the flooring, the staging, all of that's gone, leaving just the frame and the last few panels of the outer shell. But what this photo reveals is the complete lack of disregard Scientology have for the local area. Again, this is a protected area of outstanding natural beauty, and you can see here the amount of damage that this construction project has caused to the land. Obviously, you can see a little pathway here. So this is a trackway that has been laid for vehicles to get around the site without damaging the land. But of course, it becomes completely pointless when you start removing it and driving big, heavy goods vehicles over the land, regardless of the trackway. The whole purpose of the trackway is to protect the land and stop your vehicles from sinking into the ground, and therefore minimize the damage that your event causes to the local area and the environment. So it completely negates the point of having it if you're going to use heavy goods vehicles that can deal with the land being muddy and wet and so on, and you're just going to drive over it anyway. We can see here this is a big tractor right up against the structure itself, and it's clearly on the land, not on the trackway. The trackway has partially been removed, And you can see here all the tire tracks, the movements of vehicles that have been going around this structure, and indeed how churned up the land is. So you can see here these white looking patches are giant puddles, because one of the things that happens when you churn up the land like this is it becomes harder for water, for rainwater to seep into the ground. And so what it does is it actually just sits on top, increasing the flood risk. This is something that West Sussex County Council Flood Authority raised as a concern with this whole development. But Scientology, of course, don't care about that. They don't care about whether they flood the neighbourhood or the local businesses or the local houses, the residents. All they care about is putting on their event and taking down this marquee, regardless of what effect it has on the local area. You can see the extent of this damage is huge, and the scale of this thing. You can see that there's a massive crane here, just to give you an idea of the fact that this isn't just a small marquee, it is a giant structure. In fact, there's a person there, just to give you an idea of scale. This is a massive structure, and it has been completely circumventing of the planning laws because it's been put up without permission. You can see, I don't even know what that is. That looks like wiring or cabling or something. There's a small construction marquee that's been placed up there. I suppose that's probably a welfare area for the workers that are doing this. You can see in the background here, this is the St. Hill Castle, and this is where Scientologists learn the sacred materials. This is where you go to hear about Xenu, the overgalactic warlord that dropped H-bombs on volcanoes 75 million years ago, causing mass trauma, which still affects all of us humans today. That's where those materials are taught. On the right hand wing here, that's where the Great Hall is. That's where the IES event was held to begin with, when the IES was founded 41 years ago. But of course, they don't hold it in their own building anymore. They put up this massive structure instead. Here's another picture showing just how close it is to the castle. This structure actually dwarfs St. Hill Castle. That's how big it is. It is taller than the castle. And let's not forget, the castle was erected also without planning permission. This is something Scientology boast about on their TV show about St. Hill. This is something that any Scientologist in the UK can confirm, that they built the castle without permission. And the reason it's a castle is because it circumvents the need for planning permission. At the time, there was an exemption to planning laws that said something along the lines of a man can build a castle on his own land. So that's why it was a castle. It was built in the 1960s by child slave labour provided by the Church of Scientology through its Sea organisation, and the council weren't very happy about it. So the law has subsequently been changed so that people can't make use of this exception anymore. But Scientology very clearly here have a track record of completely disregarding planning laws and doing what they want regardless. Nonetheless, this is another picture from a different view that shows the extent of the damage done to the land. Here again, another view, and the proximity that this has to ancient protected woodland, because not only is St. Hill situated in an area of outstanding natural beauty, which is a registered, protected part of the countryside on which building is generally not permitted. It is also, there's also some ancient woodland situated on the site itself. All of those trees you see there on the left, all of this whole area here, I understand, is ancient protected woodland. This means this woodland has been there for thousands of years. It contains trees that have been growing for longer than Scientology has existed. And again, there is a lot of protection in place to ensure that damage isn't done to these trees. I think it's actually against the law to fell any of these trees or damage them in any way. Of course, they haven't built into this area, but they have come very close to it. You can see here the tracks and the movements of the vehicles. It is literally right up to the perimeter of this ancient protected woodland. And if you look at the planning documents for the car park that they want to build on the site, there are restrictions in place. Even if the planning application was approved, there would be conditions to ensure that no works take place within a certain distance from the ancient protected woodlands. And because Scientology have not applied for planning permission, there have been no checks and balances put in place. There's been no due diligence to ensure that this structure or the construction of this tent hasn't caused damage to the ancient protected woodland. And you can see this by just how close they are to it. If this was something that was built with permission, they wouldn't have been doing this, because they wouldn't be allowed to get so close to that ancient woodland. The damage and destruction is just outrageous, in my opinion. Here's some more pictures. You can see here how far they've got with the removal of the outer layer here. This is another picture taken from above the sports club, which neighbours St Hill. And you can see here, so that's the big marquee, that's where the event is held. And this here on the left-hand side is what's known as the during field. So that field is the Hobbs field, this is the during field, this is what they want to turn into a car park, this is the field that there is currently a planning application in the portal at Mid Sussex District Council that is all about. And they used this field, even though they haven't got permission, they paved over it completely with this temporary hard plastic sheeting so that they could fit thousands of cars on it. Or I say thousands, I think the capacity is like 900. But nonetheless, they completely paved over this entire field, and they've started removing these panels now, and you can see the extent to which that has damaged the field. You can see also the area where they haven't paved over, or it looks like they haven't paved over the field, because the grass is very green. It looks completely undisturbed, apart from the mud tracks where people obviously are going to be walking, because there's an access route that they wanted to create that goes through here, I think, for people to access the tent. So this walkway here is damaged to that land, but this whole area here is a lot greener than the rest of the field, which means they didn't pave it over for the car park, which means the capacity was even smaller than they say it was in their sort of public records and so on. But you can see here, the mud, again, completely churned over. You can see here another puddle, because water simply cannot be seeping into the ground because of the damage, because it's been churned up. The grass has completely died. And look, at the end of the day, it's a field, who cares? But I care, because it's in an area of outstanding natural beauty. That's why it's so important that construction in this area goes through the due diligence that it needs, because yes, grass will grow back, but who knows what long-term damage having this event in this area does to the local environment, the ecology in the field. There are great crested newts, which are protected species, there's a high probability they have habitats in this area, and completely paving over a field does immense damage to great crested newts and their habitats. It also potentially has long-term effects on the land. And the whole purpose of having an area of outstanding natural beauty is to ensure that development, even that which is temporary in nature, doesn't do damage, doesn't change the natural rural characteristics of the area. And that's exactly what Scientology have changed and challenged by completely doing this without any sort of permission. This photo here shows the scale of this thing in comparison to the countryside that surrounds it. You can see most of the fields, if not all of them, are completely green. They are luscious. You can see here there's a big lake in the background. This is a beautiful part of the world in the heart of the Sussex countryside. And here is this massive blot on the landscape that has been created by the Church of Scientology without permission. And who knows what long-term effects this will have. Again, scale-wise, that is a truck. And over here you can see a giant crane, and you can see the stacks of paneling here that they have been removing. So this is not just a small car park and a small event and a small structure. This is a giant structure and impact that this will have. Here's another picture from above on the tent. I think this is absolutely outrageous, and it beggars belief, the fact that Mid Sussex District Council have failed to take any sort of enforcement action whatsoever. The locals are very, very angry about this. I shared these pictures on an East Grinstead East Grinstead, like, local residents Facebook group, and a lot of people have been commenting saying just how outrageous this is, and how the council need to do something about it. Not only has this whole construction phase plagued and disrupted the local village of St Hill Green and the town of East Grinstead for 3 months, it has been done without permission, it causes disruption, and the event itself caused significant traffic backlogs, congestion on the roads. The construction noise is very annoying for those who live in East Grinstead. The locals are not happy about this. And I really do wish that Mid Sussex District Council would apply the rules equally and fairly to everybody. If I wanted to build an extension to my house, or if I wanted to put up a giant tent of this size in my garden, the council would come down hard on me and say, you can't do that without planning permission, take it down, or we'll bulldoze it down. And if you don't, we will sue you. So why Mid Sussex District Council have permitted Scientology to erect such a large structure in a protected area of outstanding natural beauty without permission, and it's been there for over 3 months, is beyond belief. I simply do not understand. Well, actually, no, I do understand why they're doing it. I do have some information that I cannot share, but I do think it is outrageous that they've been allowed to get away with it. And I think locals are quite right to be frustrated and annoyed. In fact, let's read some of the comments that I've got from locals. And maybe this is a little bit of information as to why they've been allowed to get away with it. This is an article on my blog, Scientologybusiness.com, which I have shared in the link to in the description down below. Let me change the view here. And change the size of the screen so we can read it together. There we go. Obviously, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but this here is a quote. So Jackie Russell, who is a local senior politician, she's the West Sussex County Councillor. So she is one of the most senior politicians in the local area, apart from Mims Davies, the MP. She responded to a couple of comments on social media, on Facebook, I think it was, from local residents that were asking why this has been allowed. And she gave a little bit of insight into perhaps why it's been allowed to go ahead. She said a planning contravention notice was served last year asking the church to apply for planning in the summer of this year. The church applied for a lawful development certificate, which is a mechanism to bypass the full planning process for applications that meet a certain criteria. This was refused, I believe, on the grounds that the 45,000 square foot marquee is a temporary building, thus wouldn't qualify. The church then filed an application essentially for infrastructure to support their annual event, but this did not include the marquee. Cutting a very long short story short, there are ongoing discussions between both sides, and I believe it may have been agreed that the church would resubmit an amended application to include the infrastructure request and marquee, effectively making the application retrospective, in part at least, as the marquee is already up for the event and will be down by the time any application is heard. I'm not sure if the amended application has yet been resubmitted and would have to check, but currently, as things stand, the marquee is currently classed as unlawful in the absence of any formal permission, which hopefully will be sorted in due course. Now, that was obviously posted prior to the event taking place. The marquee is now on its way to being dismantled, but perhaps there's a little bit of strategy here that Mid Sussex District Council are taking, and perhaps this is a good insight as to why they've been allowed to get away with it, because they're trying to give them an opportunity to apply for actual permission for it. If Scientology amend their existing planning application and say, hey, we don't just want to put concrete pads in the field, we actually want permission for this giant structure itself. We'll put it up on this date, we'll take it down on this date. That will create an environment in which there will be assessments into the local area, the impact the event will have on the local community and local environment and countryside. It will be assessed, it will be given scrutiny, and it will be voted on by elected members of the local council, who will then decide whether or not it should be allowed or not. If Scientology were to amend their planning application and apply for permission, I would have no problem with it, so long as there are suitable provisions to minimize disruption to the local community, to improve road safety, because as we've seen from being there, boots on the ground outside St. Hill during the IES event, there are dozens, if not hundreds, of local residents and Scientologists who walk down this dark, narrow country lane, cross the road with children, with no lighting. It is incredibly unsafe, especially when the road is 60 miles an hour, and Scientology place obstructions that are, again, illegal all along the walkway that borders the road, and try to place obstructions there to prevent protesters from joining in on the activities. to the detriment of the safety of the public. If all of those things were addressed, which they would be if Scientology were to apply for planning permission, there's no way a planning application would be approved without, public safety being considered and conditions being put in place to ensure Scientology protect the members of the public in the local area and minimize disruption as an event, as a result of this event. I would support this application because I don't have a problem with them holding this event. I have a problem with them not following the same rules as everybody else. Rules should apply to everybody all of the time, equally and universally. It is incredibly unfair for Scientology to think that the rules don't apply to them. They do. Just as they apply to me, they apply to you and everybody else. What's the point in having rules if you don't enforce them and if they only apply to certain people? That's why I have a problem with this. Scientology have a right to have whatever event they want on their property, provided they ensure that there is no disruption to the local community, provided they ensure public safety is the number one priority, and all of those things I personally think cannot be addressed at this property. I personally think the best course of action would be for Scientology to hold this event somewhere else. There's no reason really why they have to hold this event in this giant structure on their property. They could, for example, move the event to a local venue that has been purpose built, that has the capacity Scientology require and the infrastructure to support the thousands of vehicles that travel to St. Hill from across Europe, with people flocking to East Grinstead to try and hear David Miscavige speak. By holding this event at a purpose-built venue, it minimizes the disruption because it will have the infrastructure in place to support this traffic generation. The building would have already been built, so therefore there's no destruction of the countryside or damage to the local area or environment. And also, it just all round would be safer because there would be things like street lighting in place, which means that people attending the property wouldn't have to walk down a dark country narrow lane. So I personally am of the view that this event should be held elsewhere. But if they do want to hold the event on the property, they need to follow the same rules as everybody else and apply for planning permission. And there needs to be a plan in place to address all of these problems that I've just mentioned, which is not the case with their current planning application. I have written in opposition to their current planning application, but that doesn't actually address the marquee itself. It addresses the car park and the concrete pads for the marquee. So we shall see. But it's interesting at least to hear from a senior politician perhaps why they've been allowed to get away with it. And I'd like to note, as of today, there still has been no change or amendment or withdrawal of their current planning application. It appears Scientology have been advised they should amend their application. To my knowledge, that has not yet happened. But nonetheless, locals are angry. Let's hear from some of them here. I've spoken to quite a few local residents. They've reached out to me, and I've reached out to a few people and said, "What do you think about this whole thing?" Having shown them the pictures. One local resident said, "I am outraged that the so-called Church of Scientology is being allowed to ignore planning law in this way. The Church of Scientology have built an illegal structure and caused extensive damage to an area of outstanding natural beauty. They were told they must get planning consent first and have completely ignored the council. It appears that because the Church of Scientology have a reputation for being very litigious, the council is reluctant to act in any meaningful way. Simply telling the cult to stop is not enough. They need to be sanctioned. I'm sure that if I broke planning law, I wouldn't be allowed to get away with it." Another local resident said, "The total and absolute disregard for our local environment and area of outstanding natural beauty is beyond devastating. The more they show a consistent lack of respect for the area I live in, the less respect I have for them, and these days that is less than none. The abuse and destruction of our area needs to stop now." I think very, very valid points. Let's hear from some more here. Obviously, this is a quote from the local press that I published. And we also have a quote here from Mid Sussex District Council, who told me that they are considering their position in terms of enforcement action and they will get in touch soon. One local resident said, "I cannot believe that this is being allowed to happen in an area of outstanding natural beauty. What is this council and the Environment Agency doing about this? It appears to be one law for them and another for local residents." Absolutely agree. Another person told me there are so many hoops you have to jump through if you want to have any sort of planning permission in this part of Sussex. Reason for it is to ensure you can protect the environment and greenfield sites. So I understand the scrutiny. Yet, for an organisation like Scientology to blatantly disregard those rules, harm the environment, and have local officials attend the event that does so just makes me feel insignificant and disempowered. And yes, that is a very valid point for this local resident to bring to the table. Rex Whitaker, I believe, attended this event. He is a counsellor who is seen in a Scientology propaganda video shaking hands with David Miscavige. John Belsey, the current mayor, is expected to attend this event in a couple of weeks, or not this event, but this property in a couple of weeks to turn on St. Hills Christmas lights, and so far has refused to meet with us ex-Scientologists and local residents who are concerned about the message that sends to survivors of abuse. He's going to be showing up. We saw Tony Scott, a local councillor, showing up to the IES event, and most worrying of all, we saw Councillor Dick Sweatman showing up at the IES event, who is the vice chair of the planning committee. How outrageous is it to think that the vice chair of the planning committee has shown up to an event taking place in an illegal structure that has been built without planning permission? It's completely beyond me how that is not considered a conflict of interest, and how anybody could justify that as acceptable. I think it's outrageous. The locals clearly do as well. And locals are getting increasingly frustrated about Scientology's complete disregard for the local community, as evidenced by their posts on Facebook and social media, their comments to the local newspaper, to the Daily Mail, to the Sun, to the newspapers. Other newspapers have also covered, The Guardian covered it. Locals are unhappy about this, quite rightly so. And again, none of us would have a problem with Scientology's event if they just followed the rules. So that's my advice to you, Scientology. Follow the rules. We do. So why don't you, is my question. Let's look at some of these comments. Bok Buddy says, ancient woodland full of modern security cameras. Yes, Scientology have placed motion sensors and security cameras all along the perimeter and around their property. It is ancient woodland, but it has been interfered with in the form of cameras and so on, drilled into the trees. It's outrageous. I agree. Lynn here saying, won't they use sealed members to replant the grass? Well, yeah, perhaps they will. But it's not just about the grass regrowing. This is about potentially long-term damage done and construction taking place in a protected area of outstanding natural beauty, all without planning permission. That is the problem here. If they'd applied for permission, there would have been assessments and analyses done into the impact of this construction on the local environment. This is a very ecologically rich area of Sussex. Those fields are, for example, the habitats of the protected great crested newt. And by applying for planning permission, these things are all looked at before construction starts. But Scientology have completely disregarded all of that and built this thing anyway, and you can see it has done damage to the field. But nobody knows what the long-term impacts will be because there hasn't been the assessment, because they haven't applied for planning permission. That's why it's outrageous. Full of questions, Barbara says maybe Janet will be given the job to replant the land for all her flaps. Yes, we are indeed talking about Davy's erection and Janet's flaps. How funny is that? Bok Buddy here saying you need to ask Janet for the mayor's cell phone number. Look, I have emailed the mayor and said, look, you are giving Scientology a couple of hours of your time to show up and turn on their Christmas lights in an official capacity. In the interests of fairness, would you meet with us ex-Scientologists and local residents for maybe 15 minutes or half an hour for us to give you our side of the story and help you understand why we are concerned about this and why this is a problem? He has so far not responded. This question has fallen on deaf ears, and I think it is a real shame. Again, outrageous that the mayor thinks it's acceptable to go to an event at a place that is run by an organisation the government have ruled is dangerous and harmful, and an organisation that has very clearly shown a complete disrespect for the local rule of law and local council, just because St Hill have donated £50,000 to the charity that the mayor has chosen, and also the charity that the mayor is a trustee of. I think that is not a justification for Scientology to be allowed to get away with this amount of damage and destruction and disturbance to the local area. All right, now let's look at this Sea Org recruitment video. It is on my channel. I'm not going to show the whole thing, but I do want to point everybody's attention this way. This was leaked to me very, very recently. It is a recruitment video from St. Hill, and the title is Why I Joined the Sea Org. Now, of course, to avoid getting privacy strikes, because every time I show the face or the name of a Scientologist, Scientology's lawyer sends in a privacy complaint, even though it's not illegal to show someone's face on YouTube. It is something that they do like to complain about. So to avoid all of that, I have used some of these funny glasses to obscure people's faces in this video. But it is testimonies from various Sea Org members, some of whom are fairly well known in the Scientology community. If you are an ex-Scientologist, you may know some, if not all, of these people. And they are talking about why they joined the Sea organization. Here, for example, is the Deputy Jive Aces in charge. Now, if there was ever any doubt about the Jive Aces being a Scientology band, yes, the jazz and swing band that were on Britain's Got Talent are indeed Scientologists, and they are Sea Org members. They have all signed 1 billion year contracts dedicating not just this life, but all future lives to working for the Church of Scientology. If there was ever any doubt about them being Scientologists, and that being the case, this video proves it. This guy, his official job title is Deputy Jive Aces in charge, and there he is wearing a jacket that says the Jive Aces on it underneath the Sea Org logo, standing outside the Jive Aces studio, which is right next to the OSA head office at the Continental Liaison Office at Fonthill Lodge, directly opposite St. Hill. This is a very interesting video indeed, and I would suggest checking it out on my channel. If you go to Apostate Alex on YouTube and then go to the videos tab, give it a watch. And yes, I can confirm I am working on a reaction video, and I cannot wait to bring it to you. But it was fascinating to have this leak through the woodworks. Thank you so much to the person that sent it to me, and I'm glad I could bring it to you guys. And definitely leave a comment underneath as well. And finally, there's one more thing I want to bring to you. Again, thank you to the source who sent this to me. And again, something very alarming. Twickenham, which is the Allianz Stadium, it is the home of British rugby, is a very well-known sports venue. Rugby, for those of you in the States, is like American football, but, you know, rugby came first, and you don't wear pads and helmets, you just go for it. It's a little bit more violent generally, and it doesn't stop as much. American football, I do love American football, but it is very stop-start, isn't it? Well, that doesn't happen in rugby. Anyway, the home of British rugby is the Allianz Stadium in Twickenham, and there's a big match between England and Argentina happening on the 23rd of November. That's Sunday. And Scientology, of course, are trying to exploit this as an opportunity to spread the word of their front group, The Truth About Drugs. Here is a flyer promoting this to their parishioners. This was leaked to me by an inside or a close to inside source. England versus Argentina. Allianz Stadium, drug-free world distribution. Join us for a drug-free world distribution. Meet at the Allianz Stadium, Twickenham, in front of the rugby player statue. First shift 2 p.m, second shift 5 p.m. And this is accompanied by a map here of where they are meeting. Now, you might ask, what's the problem with people handing out drugs, warning people of the dangers? Handing out leaflets, warning people of the dangers of taking drugs. Now, I don't have a problem with that. But what I do have a problem with is these particular booklets and this particular front group, because these booklets are not written by a scientist, by a medical professional, by any sort of person with knowledge or expertise into the science of the impact drugs have on your body and of on your mind. They are written by the Church of Scientology, and they are handed out and produced by Scientologists, by the church itself. And the reason they do this is not because they care about getting people off drugs. It's because they want to be seen as doing community work. And they also want an excuse to raise funds because, yes, they may be giving out these booklets for free, but somebody's got to pay for them, even though they produce them in house. So it gives them an opportunity to call people up and say, hey, do you want to donate to help us get these leaflets printed, and get a bunch of people together so that they can get a photo or a video taken of their volunteers handing out booklets outside the stadium, because that allows them to create propaganda which suggests the stadium approves of them doing this, and it shows that maybe Scientologists are on the front line, and they have credibility because they're handing out leaflets outside this massive sports venue. In actual fact, they won't be doing it with permission. They'll just be rocking up. They're doing it for a photo opportunity, and they're doing it as a recruitment tactic. How can you tell it's a recruitment tactic? Well, because of this big stamp here that says United for a Cleared UK. Now, clear is the Scientology state that you achieve when you have got rid of your reactive mind. The only way you can do this is through ascending the bridge to total freedom, doing courses and auditing at the Church of Scientology. And what they want to do is clear the planet. So they want everybody in the planet to achieve this state of clear through Scientology auditing. And of course, one of the steps to clearing the planet is to clear the UK. Now, if you want to clear the UK, one of the things you're going to need to do is get people off drugs. But handing out a leaflet is not a book sale, it's not a Scientology course. It will be counted as a statistic. But if they genuinely wanted to get people off drugs because they wanted to help them, this wouldn't be on this flyer. The flyer, very clearly, United for a Cleared UK, shows that this is a recruitment tactic. Scientology are using distribution of drug-free world booklets in order to have conversations with people about Scientology and how great it is to the community and how you should come in and join. Essentially, that's how these things work. I know because I've done it. I was a recruiter for the Church of Scientology at London Org. I did things like this. I know how it works. The purpose is to get good photos and recruit people, and that's it. So it's absolutely outrageous that they are going to be taking advantage of this national sporting event on Sunday in London. And if you are in the area, perhaps you can show up and get some pictures and videos of them doing this for me. I'm not going to be able to be there, unfortunately, because I will be at work, but I would appreciate some photos and some inside intel if you are there, if you're going to the rugby match, or if you're in the area on Sunday. 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. are the two times that they will be giving booklets out outside the Allianz Stadium. The flyer says to meet outside the rugby players' statue. So fingers crossed somebody can go there and get some pictures for me. It would be very interesting to see it nonetheless. But that's it from me for now, guys. You'll be seeing a lot more of me over the next couple of days because, like I said, I've taken a nice break and I have returned full of energy and drive and enthusiasm for helping getting people out of Scientology and helping spread the word of just how offensive this organization is, not just to us as ex-Scientologists, but offensive to local residents. They are clearly fed up with this organization doing what it wants without permission and without following the rules that everybody else has to follow. It's a big problem. I will be coming back to talk more about it, but thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you guys on the next one.